definitely be 100% authentically yourself. You have to find a voice. Do not think that you are too timid to have a voice, or you're too little to have a voice, or you're too behind the scenes to have a voice. There are a million different types of personalities, and any single personality is capable of leadership. Find a cause, a passion, and work towards building a platform.
Good afternoon once again, everyone, for being here. So, over the last 2 years, the Eastern Caribbean Alliance for Diversity and Equality, ECADE, we embarked on this journey of hosting youth perspective sessions where we bring young people from the region together to discuss pertinent issues affecting youth and to speak on international days of note. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Randall Theodule, and I am the Communications Officer for ECADE. And today we have with us a distinguished panel of young women who are actively involved or passionate about politics, and we'll be discussing Women on Politics, Break the Bias, which was the hashtag claimed for International Women's Day. I would like to take this time and thank you all for agreeing to be part of this discussion. And with that being said, I would like to inform all attendees that if you'd like to make a comment, please use the raise your hand option, or you could put the comment in the chat and I will make note of that. Please mute your mic when you are not speaking and be respectful of others' speaking time and opinions. And with no further ado, I'd like to welcome our panelists and introduce them. First, we have Senator Lucia C. Jawahir. Correct me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. And despite coming from an impoverished background, Senator Lucia C. Jawahir's active participation in the church and community very early put her on a positive path. She developed skills in public speaking, singing, teaching, and preaching while helping the disenfranchised. Jawahir graduated from the Castries Comprehensive Secondary School and the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College with government assistance. She followed her associate's degree in business administration with a master's in strategic communication in Washington, D.C. She served as a pro bono committee liaison for the Washington Women in Public Relations, WWPR, and the International Association of Business Communicators, IABC. And is the recipient of the Darkhorse Award from the Public Relations Society of Americas. Returning to St. Lucia, she continued her community work with a focus on youth. She served on the executive of South Castries Youth and Sports Council and founded the Forestier Youth Ambassadors Initiative. Lisa has worked with Capella Hotel, the Motion Picture Association of America, Carnival Cruise Lines, Princess Cruises, Digital Kitchen, and others, including producing her own show, Lisa Live. A recent prospective candidate for the St. Lucia Labour Party, Lisa now serves as a government senator. So that's our first panelist. Welcome, Senator Jawahir. Next, we have Sydni Walker, who is a 21-year-old student from the Isle of Spice, Grenada, who is currently in her first year of pursuing her certificate of legal education at the U Wooding Law School. She has spent her academic life involved in various community and welfare organizations and is passionate about a life grounded in community service, activism, and leadership. During her time at UWI campus, she further paid her favor for leadership at the student level, engaging in 3 levels of student governance, including the Guild of Students and the Grenada Students Association at KVille. In these roles, she led protests concerning the rights of the hall residents, advocated for students' rights and protection, and was active in the UWI response to the COVID-19 pandemic, especially concerning communication to the student population. She is also a recent graduate from the Women in Politics Leadership Institute, coordinated by RAW, what is her favorite thing about service to others is the ability to look outside of ourselves and connect our existence and actions to propelling our societies to higher levels. It is the ultimate recognition of one's connection to everything around. Our third panelist, we have Gabrielle Brantley, who is also a 21-year-old, final year law student at University College London, UCL. Outside of her law degree, Gabrielle is a strong advocate for women taking up leadership positions Recently, she graduated from the Women in Politics Leadership Institute, WIPLE, hosted by the Regional Organization of Women in Leadership, ROL. She's sponsored by the U.S. Embassy in Barbados, WIPLE is a 6-week training program for emerging female leaders in areas of leadership, politics, local governance, and networking. Gabrielle is also a mover and shaker in the area of youth development. She is the founder of the Nevis Youth Careers Expo, NICE, a careers fair for Nevis school leavers. At NICE, students will hear from a wide spectrum of professionals about what a career in their respective fields entails. The inaugural NICE is set for March 25th, 2022, and Gabrielle intends for this to be an annual event. And our final panelist for this afternoon session is Nafesha Richardson, who is a vibrant young leader from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. She founded Spark SVG, a youth serving NGO in 2019, and also serves as the coordinator of the Commonwealth Youth Gender and Equality Network, SIGEN, having previously held the roles of EXCO for Youth Transitions and Caribbean and Americas Lead in the Reform 53 campaign. Nafesha is a Women Deliver Young Leader, a youth champion of the ECADE Agreement, and a One Young World Ambassador. In 2020, Nafesha completed her LLB at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus, and she is currently pursuing her LEC at the U Wooding Law School. So welcome, panelists, and it's a pleasure to have all of you here with us today. So I'm just going to go right into our first question. The Honorable Mia Maudsley of Barbados is currently carrying the baton first lifted by Dame Mary Eugenia Charles, who has the distinction of being the first female to be elected Prime Minister in the Caribbean and her native land of Dominica. She was followed by the Honorable Janet Jagan of Guyana, the Honorable Michelle Pierre-Louise in Haiti, the Honorable Portia Simpson Miller in Jamaica, and the Honorable Kamala Prasad Bissar in Trinidad and Tobago. We have had several notable female leaders in the private and public sector, including government officials, ministers, CEOs, board presidents, founders, and established companies. Can you give us an idea of the current state of women in politics in your country?
Can any one of us begin?
Yes.
I'd like to start, and if my other panelist doesn't mind, yeah? All right. So firstly, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. Just to be clear, I am speaking about the tri-island state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. That is my home country, my country of love, you know. So before getting into it, my answer requires that I make some distinctions first. To begin, I think it would be remiss of us to only consider politics as related to the operations of governments and state governance. While we understand that politics is widely viewed as such in the general population, we cannot ignore the other levels that it encompasses. For instance, to ignore grassroots politics, local movements and platforms, work of members of our population at the international level, whether that be the diaspora effecting change in the homeland, or women taking up spaces in regional and international groups. So I think it best to take and address politics in reference to all its contributing players. So I'll address my question in 3 parts. Firstly, the female political representation in Grenada, interactions in the political arena in Grenada, and what has Grenada done so far to protect our women. Now, I think our female representation at the government and administrative level has greatly improved. Historically, Grenada has had women engaged in our governments even before we attained independence. Our very first governor was Dame Hilda Bino, who served from 1968 to 1974. However, in that entire time from independence to this current period, only 2 of our political parties have ever had female leaders. That would have been Joan Purcell for NDC in 1998 and Ms. Gloria Payne Banfield for GULP in 2003. Now, currently at the government level, we have our Governor General, Her Excellency Dame Cecile Lagrenade. 41% of our members of cabinet are women. 31% of the members of Senate are women. This goes on to include 35% of the House of Representatives, 14 permanent secretaries, 3 out of 4 High Court judges, the Secretary to Cabinet, the Press Secretary to the PM, the Solicitor General, and the Chief Magistrate. So basically, we have I would say we're doing a lot better than a lot of other places in terms of our current female representation. In terms of regional and international politics, Grenada has women who are effecting change in their spaces. Just to reference the University of the West Indies, particularly the Cable campus, we have people such as Professor Eugene Barreto and Dr. Wendy Grenade, who inspire student activism, lead groups and chair boards in their own right, and effect change through education and administration. Not to mention that they both have also written countless books and papers addressing Caribbean history, politics, and development. Professor Barreto has also had significant impact in effecting regional change by transforming education at the KFL campus, which includes the inclusion of a multitude of faculties and programs. For instance, you might have heard of the recent launch of the Faculty of Culture at the ECADE campus. She also has made international change, such as standing as the Caribbean coordinator for the development alternatives of women in a new era in the late 90s. So her entire professional career is full of these kinds of forms of activism. Also know people like Miss Akima Paul Lambert, a renowned Grenadian lawyer based in the UK, who focuses her platform on making justice accessible and on social and environmental governance. One of my favorites, we have Dr. Nicole Phillip Dow. She's head of the UE Open Campus in Grenada. She's a well-known historian with a special focus on women in Grenadian history. And I would argue that she's indeed a necessary and cherished political player. I don't think anything is more political than telling Grenadian and Caribbean history from the perspective of the actual people, especially women, and especially where their voices were often completely removed from history altogether. Now, these are by no means all of our female political players, but I felt it necessary to mention the reach of our women. However, let us not ignore the negatives, for we cannot address the state of politics only in the affirmative. Otherwise, we would paint a very false and one-sided picture. Now we come to the political interactions. Our female politicians at all levels face sexism, misogyny, and beliefs of incompetence solely based on their gender. As women, they have had to go above and beyond and be exceptional just to be barely held on the same level with men who are less qualified than they are. For instance, and I'd consider this a Caribbean-wide issue, when looking at political debates or the statements of our leaders on social media, you know that oftentimes when critiques are delivered by a female leader to a male colleague, no matter how intellectual, truthful, or realistic her critique is, she's often met with personal attacks on her character, misogynistic statements, and insults based on fertility, sex, gender, and their families. It was just a couple of years ago, I can't remember which country it was, where this female member of the opposition, she was questioning some policies and the related budget to one of the male ministers. And he responded to her by saying, why doesn't she focus on the miscarriages and all the children she lost in the last 10 years? What an embarrassing stint in our political history, right? It turns our political scene into an actual soap opera. And where we have our male leaders exacerbating this misogyny and making such disgusting public comments, what are we to expect from our people? Also note that the trend of keeping female ministers in softer ministries, what they consider to be the more nourishing ministries, like education and so forth, is alive and well in Grenada. Not to say that these ministries are not important in their own right. We need to make that distinction here. Misogyny is taught. No one is born inherently misogynistic, and we have to address our responsibility in perpetuating these ideals. It is apparent in our elections, in our courtrooms, in our education systems, in sittings of parliament, especially sittings of parliament, in international meetings like those of the UN, for example. And then we come to my last part. What are we doing in Grenada to protect our women? So Grenada has done things legally and policy-wise, for instance, ratifying the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women in 1990. In responses from Grenada concerning the Inter-American Convention on the Prevention, Punishment, and Eradication of Violence Against Women, they agreed to actions including creating a new Domestic Violence Act, development of legislation on protection orders for women, creating the Child Protection Adoption Act, and refining of the criminal code to more competently deal with sexual offenses, as well as creating and supporting organizations that protect vulnerable populations, such as the Grenada National Organization of Women, the Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic, the Association of Professional Social Workers, the Coalition of the Rights of the Child, and Grandchild. However, much of the country's support in upholding these policies is on paper more than anything else. And I think we could all appreciate the irony of our ministers preaching protection of women while victimizing the female opposition leaders and colleagues in the same breath. So to conclude, Grenada has produced exceptional female leaders and has made efforts to protect women. However, the political arena, these platforms, no matter what sector of the country we're talking about, they all still reek of misogyny. So that's my contribution.
Thank you very much, Sydney. That was a lot to take in, but I think you touched on a lot of very important issues. And I think some of them are still happening in the current climate. It doesn't matter whichever country that you're in at the moment. I'm not sure if anybody else would like to join after Sydney, if anyone has anything else to add.
Right here, Randall. I wasn't sure if we had a particular order. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really honored to be in the presence of two Whipley sisters. Congratulations to Sydney and Gabrielle. I did not get to meet you. I was part of the first cohort by the US Embassy, and it was certainly a life-changing experience. Can you imagine 2+ years later, some of those young ladies and myself, we are so very close. Currently, some of them are in Barbados having a good time. I really wish I could be there with them, but it's certainly a life-changing experience to see that women across the region can come together to learn from each other. Randall, thank you so much for this opportunity. I am from the beautiful island of St. Lucia, and I have to confess, we are not where we would like to be. In St. Lucia, in the Senate, majority of our government senators are female. We only have 2 male senators. One is the president and one is the leader of government business. And we have 5 others, including myself. On the opposition side, there is 1. So in the Senate, the upper house, the women are dominating. In the lower house, we only have 2 female members of parliament. And they are an army, more than just the 2 of them, because the males in our party also believe in breaking the bias. They have also been very supportive. Recently, the St. Lucia Labour Party held its closed conference of delegates to appoint its executive and also to pass a resolution to provide more support for our females. Obviously, there are persons who are hesitant about the fact that women might be given a sign of favoritism. There's, tokenism. We are giving them an opportunity just to say that we want to have equal participation. But I must say that the women who are involved in politics in St. Lucia, I don't believe any one of them was placed in the positions that they are in now because of tokenism. They've all earned their right there, and it has motivated them even more to prove to themselves and to other women that you can do this. Now, last week was a very victorious week for us, for our party in government, because we passed the domestic violence bill, which first came to our House of Parliament in 1994. This year made it 28 years that this bill was just out there, and previous administrations did not have an opportunity to be on the right side of history, which is to create equal opportunities for our women, our girls. And this time, the bill was more inclusive. It wasn't just speaking about women. It wasn't just speaking about girls. It was also speaking about emotional abuse, economic abuse that men face as well. Now, like I said when I started, we would really like to be further along, but I know that the government that I'm a part of it has made it its duty to include women, not because we believe that there needs to be because you're a woman, we have to put you there, but because we believe in the value that women bring to elections. The entire 2021 elections was run by women in the back, the women's group. They're the ones doing the barbecues. They're the ones raising the funds. They are the ones ensuring that the candidate visits this family, speaks to the elderly. They go out, they give out hampers. They are organized, they are passionate, and it is part of our human nature to be caring and to be nurturers of our country. And they're also the ones who wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to stand on the line to vote. I think as a society, we have to do so much better. I mean, we are tired of talking. And that is why our Prime Minister ensured that in the first year of us being in government, we needed to pass the domestic violence bill, an inclusive bill that would impact the lives of women, girls, and men. So today I'm really happy to be part of this discussion. I did not want to make my introduction very long. Sydney, thank you so much for sharing. I learned a lot about your government and what's happening over in Grenada, and I intend to learn a whole lot more from the rest of you ladies. So again, thank you for having me here today.
I think I would jump in here as well. And I too am a Whipley sister, so it sort of feels like a reunion. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we had our last election in 2020, and absolutely no women were elected, 0. 3 were later appointed, 2 senators on the government side and 1 on the opposition. For the first time, our Speaker of the House, the Honorable Rochelle Ford, is a woman. And our Governor General, Her Excellency Dame Susan Duggan, is also the first woman to serve as Governor General in St. Vincent. So I think it's clear that we are making steps in some regards, but in others, there are huge, significant gaps, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. A report was done by it's called the IPU Global Data on National Parliaments, and out of 90 countries, St. Vincent and the Grenadines ranked 128 in terms of the participation of women in parliament. And 128 out of 190 is nearing the bottom of the barrel, in my opinion. So I think I definitely agree with Sydney's sentiments that, and the sentiments of the senator as well, that when you look at the grassroots level as the people who are pushing the campaigns and the ones going door to door, that's where you see women leading. But on the face of government, we don't have that sort of visibility. I know it's happening in St. Vincent, and it's an issue that we have across the region. So I think, this is an excellent discussion for us to really see what we can do, not only in our own countries, but to band together to change the state and the state that women are facing in politics in the region.
I guess it's my turn to sort of jump in. Firstly, I want to share the sentiments of my Whipley sisters and say hi. I feel like I haven't seen you all in forever. When was it? Last October was probably the last time we saw each other. So we all know each other. To give Randall some sort of context, because we all did the same program last September, October. So we would have all known each other from that. To answer the question now, I don't think I can give as lovely a response as Sydney, in the sense that St. Kitts Nevis, where I'm from, is nowhere close to, I think, where it should be, much like what Nafesha is saying about SPG. If I go back in history and then sort of come forward, just out of my head, I know our first female representative, I think our first female minister of government was Dame Constance Mitchell. And she was a member of the People's Action Movement, PAM government. And I know she would have been the one to champion women's rights to, for example, maternity leave with pay. And she also stopped the then discriminatory practice of dismissing women who were pregnant and were pregnant outside of wedlock, and they were civil servants. I know she also did away with that. I know she was also the champion of removing the old English distinction that we used to have in the Caribbean, when we used to differentiate between children who were born into wedlock and children who weren't. Now, thanks to her, we do not see any distinction between children at all, and they're all seen as equal under the law. Since then, we would have had female representatives. Out of my head, I know we would have had, Nurse Jean in Nevis. We would have had Ms. Berlene Clark. At the federal government level, we would have had Marcella Liburd, Joan Messiah, Jacinth Henry Martin, who I think would have spoken to us Whipley sisters last October when we had our classes. Fast forward now, however, to 2020, which I think was our last election, much like SPG. As far as I know, we only have one elected female representative in the federal government in the form of Honorable Akila Barron Nisbet. So that is clearly not good enough. And it's clearly very male-dominated there. In Nevis, I know we have Honorable Hazel Brandy Williams, who is the Junior Minister of Gender Affairs, I think she is currently. We have Honorable Cleon Stapleton Simmons, who is the elected representative for the St. Thomas's Parish, but on the opposition benches. We do have a Deputy Governor General who is female in the form of Mrs. Hailita Liburd. And we do have a set of women coming in. I guess the only sort of positive I can see from this is we do have lots of women who have been launched as candidates for their parties. So we haven't had our elections yet, our local elections. But I know, for example, that we've seen candidates for the PAM, the People's Action Movement. I believe Mrs. Nafesha Gray is running as a candidate there. In Nevis, we have Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, Dr. Patricia Bartlett, Ms. J.D. Keynes are all running for the Nevis Reformation Party, NRP, in Nevis. So we're seeing increasingly positive steps towards more female involvement in politics. I think I tend to look at the glass as sort of half full rather than half empty. So I might be being too optimistic here, but I definitely see a trend towards more women coming towards the political arena, more women being interested in politics, which is definitely a good sign. But sharing SVG sentiments, of course, Nafesha's sentiments, and St. Lucia, Lisa's sentiments, we truly are not where we should be at this point in time.
Thank you, Gabrielle, and thank you to the other panelists. Seems out of the 4 countries being represented today, Grenada is some steps ahead. So kudos to Grenada for that. But Gabrielle, you spoke on a point that I think which leads into my next question. We said you see you like to view the glass as half full instead of half empty because there's some sort of interest for women getting into politics. So that goes into my next question. If this is an area which you, any of you, the panelists, are interested in exploring, except Senator Jawahir, who's already actively involved, can you tell us why and how you plan to make your contributions in the field of politics if you are interested? Or you maybe are, but sometimes doing stuff in the background. I know that people like staying in the background and getting stuff done. So if you're interested, you could just let us know why you're interested and how you plan to make your contributions.
Randall, I think I'll start with this one because I think my response will probably be the shortest out of everyone here. I truly am not sure about politics. I think it's interesting to study. I definitely love looking at it from afar, but as I'm sure Senator Jawahir could tell us, it is very different being on the outside looking in and actually living it, Yeah. So I definitely find it intriguing. I find it interesting. Am I totally outwardly opposed to ever running? No. Am I convinced? No. So I don't think I can give an answer because, I'm not certain yet. I feel like I have age on my side. I have life on my side. I'm 21. So hopefully I have some time to think about it still. But I'm an advocate, if you think more women should be involved, if you think women should be doing X, if you think women should be doing Y, then you should probably do it yourself. So I'll leave you with that.
Yeah.
Gabrielle, let's speak a book right there. Love that. So I'll go next. So my particular area for political involvement is definitely not at the governmental level. It's more so geared towards community programs. And my particular passion is access to education, which I don't think would be considered direct advocacy for a women's issue, honestly. So my intent is to develop a hybrid program consisting of access to skills training, scholarship opportunities, especially for areas not currently supported by government, access to special needs assistance, and overall financial training and future planning for students. And what does really get me, is that in the Caribbean at 16, 17, 18, we're tossed into the world and told, figure that out, decide where you want to go, decide what you want to be, decide who you need to be in this particular moment. And I think that there's a lot of space for students to have tools to be able to navigate that. My intention is to create a space that is justly accessible to all students or potential students. And I think that in embedding that level of meritocracy in the creation of these kinds of opportunities, that it would, in essence, become an advocacy for women's issues. Because in a meritocratic system where everybody has that fair chance, we are limiting that area where we can have unfairness or bias, yeah? And why? Because the intent is to level the playing field. Now, this area is very, very personal for me. I know what it's like to not grow up without much, to not have the opportunity or the funding, but to have the ability. And it's because of that ability that I was lucky enough to make it as far as I have currently. If it wasn't for scholarships, I could not have dreamed of attaining any sort of tertiary education, and I'll be honest about that. But there are hundreds of students who can make it and they've never had a chance. Not all of us have links or even the money to be able to attend school. And that wasted undiscovered potential is literally heartbreaking. So a meritocratic approach to accessible education is quite literally, my dream. Yeah.
I think I'll let the senator speak last on this point. I think I'm balancing a bit between Gabriella and Sydney. I'm definitely not opposed to politics, and I can say that I would be interested in exploring it for sure. But like Sydney said, leadership can take place in different ways. So the way that I'm doing it right now is through my organization and, creating safe spaces for young people to speak up on issues that are affecting them, that then relay back to ministers and our prime minister about, what young people are facing and how they feel about particular issues. So I would say that is my current modus operandi. I'm not sure, if in 5-10 years from now, how that may change, but I think I'm definitely open-minded about it. And, you have to also sort of recognize that even though, you may be a bit hesitant about some things, if you realize you're being pushed in a certain direction, then it's also worthwhile to dive right into it. So my current state is being open-minded and, going where life takes me.
Okay. It sounds like every one of you is involved in politics in some way or the other, whether it be in your advocacy, in making recommendations to your minister or to your government. Politics is really how the country's run, and we all can play our part in any way to change the lives of the majority. Minister Rambali was 21. She had 3 months to campaign. She's from my constituency, Castries Southeast in St. Lucia. And she won. In 3 months, she won. She was 21. Okay, Gabriella, she was your age. And right now, as of Thursday, she presented her credentials to the UN. This is her second stint as our resident ambassador to the UN. She is a remarkable person, somebody I admire greatly. So for me, yes, I was a prospective candidate. I don't know what the future holds. Sometimes I find it's easier to get things done if you are not an elected politician, because the cabinet of ministers have to go through a certain process to get approval, whereas you might be able to start your own advocacy on the ground and get things done. So we don't know what is going to happen, but is the interest there to represent the masses? Yes. Is the interest there to help change the lives of people? Of course. In this pandemic, we've seen an upsurge in crime all across the Caribbean, and it is because people do not have the information that they need to learn how to manage their anger, how to be resilient when faced with crisis. And Sydney, I believe your educational programs, however you decide to do that, can impact the lives of so many people in some way or the other. I'm not saying that I'm pushing you all to do it. I'm just thinking of how you are on the right path. I'm 33. When I came in as a prospective candidate, I was 31, 10 years older than Minister Rambali from the same constituency. In my time as an opposition senator, I was the youngest opposition senator. I believe I'm still the youngest government senator. Recently, well, actually Friday, we had a discussion with the resident British High Commission, and we were talking about all the different things that we believe can be done to help encourage more female participation. And Sydney, one thing that was consistent was education, information. How are we bringing the programs to our people? How are we going to educate our women so they get from a point of, having the small community activities and spearheading that to a point where they become a leader in local governments, maybe a mayor, maybe a constituency representative one day. So your education programs may somehow propel some people to get to that point. I think the future is bright for every single lady who's here on this panel. And I'm really happy to hear that it is not something that you're opposed to. But of course, the one thing I can say is to learn from the people who have gone before you.
Yes, and I think that's important. Learning from those who have been there, seeing what their struggles were, seeing what worked for them and what didn't work for them, you could now use that to plan out how you're going to represent, what you're going to do differently that could give you that edge over someone else. So thank you for that. And that just goes into my next question, saying most of you are not opposed to it. We know women in politics, they face certain challenges, sometimes because of their gender. And when Sydney spoke earlier, she mentioned, when leaders in government, during the campaign trail, you hear they attack the women on the gender, saying certain things to women, which, you really and truly should not really be said. So do you feel like there is any further challenges that might be influenced by the female gender in the politics arena? And I'm going to start with Senator Jawahir on that one.
One thing that has been consistent, and it also came up at the discussion I was just talking about with the resident commissioner, it seems that the biggest challenge that some women face is the support of other women. Where do I start? When I came into politics, there are persons who would fall in love with you and want to encourage you. And there are those who would be like, where she come from? She knew who she thinks she is. You didn't start from, where they expect you to start. And it might just be the misconception that they are also fighting this notion that women are being favored, or it's the tokenism, and they want to prove that you are earning your spot. And it's also a number of other things too. I think one of the biggest challenges that women face is the support of other women. And if we have the majority of persons who are coming to the polls being female, if we have the majority of persons who drive the campaigns are also female, then it begs the question, what really is the problem? Is it really that we are expecting men to push us to the next level? Or should the solution be us coming together to educate each other, to learn from each other, and see how one person can stand on the shoulders of another? We can all learn from each other. And that is how I have grown in politics in St. Lucia. The senior and more experienced women around me, I always have time for them. I always want to hear what they have to say because they have been there, they have their experiences. And I think in addition to that, it makes them feel valued, it makes them feel appreciated. So there's no situation where we have to feel threatened. We should all coexist. We should find ways to help support each other. So yes, that is one of the issues. The other issue can be that generally we don't have much females in the highest levels of organizations. But St. Lucia has been doing fairly well. When it comes to private sector, a lot of our private sector leadership positions are occupied by women. But politics is where the hard cookie is. In addition to that, I think if we have those education campaigns, we will empower our women and girls. We bring it in the schools. They learn from such a tender age that when you're thrown into the fire like me at my age, you would have at least have some prior knowledge or at least know what you're getting into. I think the education needs to start from the schools, especially with the youth elections, the youth council elections. These things need to be taken more seriously. I would love to see that happen in St. Lucia.
Yeah.
I definitely agree, particularly the part that you ended with about young people. I feel as though there's a general disinterest with young people where politics is concerned, and it then spills into other areas. I think the obvious is persisting gender roles in society, where we see is the where a woman belongs or where a man belongs. Then we have the ideologies about women and their responsibilities to bear children, and saying that women are supposed to be in the home taking care of the children, and they're not supposed to be in politics because politics is too rough and there's no safety net to fall back on. So women must immediately fall back into their shell. And I think apart from all of that, we can do a lot more in terms of, as a society and the ecosystem that we create. If the general notion is that women are less than and women do not belong, then it would not spill into politics. But if we take an active step at all levels, whether it's political, whether it's our farmers, our fishermen, our fisherwomen, at all levels, to ensure that women are represented and they have the resources and the finance that they need to put forward whatever they're doing, then I think it would spill into heavier topics like politics. But when at our basic level in the home, we see that women are mistreated, disrespected, then that sort of internal issue would not be able to, represent. Then, okay, if we have that issue rather in the home, then there's no way that we're going to see it on the flip side in politics. So I think things like training, I know there's the touchy topic about quotas and whether quotas is a good way to ensure that, we have women adequately represented in parliament. And like I said, just changing the narrative and the way that we see women in society and in the homes, I think that would be a good starting point for some of us who, like I said, we are far, far behind. The narrative at home needs to change.
I definitely agree with Nafesha. And I just wanted to jump onto something she said about she thinks that youths are generally disinterested. Now I'm going to offer a counter opinion. I think that modern politics is very exclusionist. I think what we like to see are middle-aged men in office for 20 plus years running the same policies every single election period. I can give you a working example. For instance, right, the National Democratic Congress, that's NDC Grenada, the new leader that came out, his name is Dickon Mitchell, and he is quite young. I think he's less than 30. I can't exactly remember his age. And every time this man makes any sort of statements or any sort of media, the critiques are never about his policies, his ideas, what he intends to do. It's about the fact that he young, he ain't know what he doing, he ain't know nothing about this. He just rich and he trying to run as political leader. I think our politics, like especially speak for Grenada, it's very exclusionist when it comes to young people. Now, I could speak from my personal experience in this area. I haven't had challenges so much in terms of entry, but more about what occurs when I'm already sitting at the table. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm very opinionated and expressive, right? Which does me well in professional settings because I know how to moderate that. But as a woman, a young one that does not portray myself as traditionally feminine, I tend to upset men at the table all the time. For instance, in my time serving at the Guild Council of the Cable Campus, I'd experienced this all the times going into meetings with higher-ups. These middle-aged men would attempt to intimidate me and my female colleagues because we were a predominantly female guild at the time. They would attempt to intimidate us and they'd act offended anytime we'd give them a critique because it's like, what's the girl and them doing inside of here talking to us at all? And it's like they intended us to be more so puppets than student advocates, which is what we signed up and were elected to be. In my professional life as well, as was mentioned in my bio, I'm studying law. And I've worked in law firms for the last 3 or 4 years, right? I can tell you the legal fraternity is plagued with misogyny. Imagine male colleagues who you are literally in the same year group with, studying the same degree with, at the same stage, trying to refer to you as a little girl in professional settings. Now, that was one of the biggest disrespects of my life. And I'm not going to go into how that went down, but I think you could get the gist because those sorts of things are infuriating. And it's also the way as women, our passion and responses are perceived. Why am I considered emotional for holding my ground? when the man literally screaming in the meeting next to me is considered passionate. And this reaction doesn't just come from men. A lot of women, as the senator rightfully said, make the internalized misogyny very known. Not to mention that the levels of sexual impropriety that exist in the male-dominated spaces create such an unsafe environment. I don't know if anyone of you have ever been a woman working in an all-male office, but the kind of harassment that you could face sometimes is enough to deter you from coming back to work at that place. And in pursuit of the kind of career and lifestyle I've chosen, I know I'm going to meet a lot more of this, but I'm nothing if not a fighter, right?
So I guess to just add on to what Sydney was saying, particularly her comment about a woman working in an all-male sort of a male-dominated area. I think in terms of politics, as I said, going back to St. Kitts and Nevis, because we have so little women involved in politics, I think, to go back to Randall's question, was what further roadblocks? For us, I think it would definitely be, as women, probably imposter syndrome. I experience this all the time. I don't know if any of you have experienced it, but that feeling where you don't feel like you belong, you don't feel like you're here because you, off of merit, you think you're here. Similar to tokenism in the sense that, you know, probably you're just here because, I don't know, you're a woman, you look good for the stats, you know. I think that would probably be one issue, that feeling like, okay, nobody around me looks like me. Am I here because I'm supposed to be here? Do I know as much as the men? Am I taken as seriously as the men? I think that's probably one of the further roadblocks. And I don't think it's something that's going to go anywhere anytime soon. Because like I said, it's a male-dominated area. These men will continue to be there for quite some time, I'd say. And I don't think it's to say that, sort of to go back to something Sydney said, at least in St. Kitts Nevis, I don't think it's to say that there are lots of women who are trying to get in and they're not being allowed to get in. I wouldn't say it's exclusionist to that extent. I think just there are not many women who are interested in politics in St. Kitts Nevis. You'd see more men who are writing, I don't know, Facebook posts, writing Twitter posts, commenting. They don't like this, they don't like that. You hardly see that in women. And again, it could just be that they're toying with it, maybe in their head, but they're not saying anything outwardly. It could be an us problem. Maybe we're not creating that forum where they feel comfortable and able to do that. But at least from what I can see, it's not really the case that there are so many women who are trying to get in and are being told at the door, sorry, you can't enter. It's more so that there are not many women who are interested in the first place. And if you're not interested in the first place and the system is such that it's male dominated as is, it makes it even harder to sort of get up the ranks. So yes, to answer that question, I definitely say that feeling of imposter syndrome, like you don't belong. And I you know, there are women like me, and Sydney seems to have a similar personality in the sense that, you know, you see this and you think, okay, well, right, I'm the only woman here. I'm gonna make my mark. I'm gonna do the best that I can possibly do, and I'm gonna show them that I'm not here because of, I don't know, a quota. I'm here because I'm supposed to be here. Lots of women, or other women rather, would shy away from that and say, oh, I don't have anybody to talk to. Nobody really gets me. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go into a profession where people get me, where I'm going to have people to talk to, and then I'm going to be comfortable. So it's just how, what it goes down to personality, what type of person you are, if you can handle that sort of atmosphere. But yeah, truly, I think it has to be imposter syndrome, and that's going to be something that continues for many years to come, for sure.
Let me just add, listening to all of you, I think what I could add to that is, you know, growing up as young people in society, you know, we always get these whole social norms and the stereotypes that we're taught, or something that we see in our everyday lives, and it's being repeated daily. And I think seeing that they've made politics, you know, a more male-dominated field, unless, you know, the woman is strong enough or have enough courage to take that step and enter the arena, most would think of it like that male space where they don't feel like they belong, where their voice will not be heard. And that goes back to the whole thing that women must be seen and not heard. When you go into the politics arena, it's like you're going there to have guys disrespect you on a platform in front of the entire country, from people in the region to see how you're being treated as a female. I think all that plays a part in women now wanting to take a step back and not fully engage in politics in the region. And I think that's something I've observed. I'm not sure if it's the same for everyone on the call, but I think we and Senator Jawahir and Sydney, Nafesha, all of you touched on that. The education aspect needs to continue. The more we educate people, the more we could try to change the narrative and change their mind about what really is politics. Why do people really go into politics? And seeing how much of a difference it could make, seeing you being represented by somebody like you, somebody in your age group. So that's just my take on that question. And that just goes, most times people use women as women enter politics. Those who are there to just speak mainly on issues affecting women. So my question is, there's an argument for female politicians being forced on issues affecting women, on achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. And is that in itself a bias?
I'd love to start with this one. Gabrielle, you want to go ahead?
I was just saying, I'm going to have to fight Sydney to start on this one, But if you...
No, you could go ahead. I'll ease back. I'll rock back.
Okay. Okay, well, just very quickly, because I have very strong views on this one. I do think that women should have certain rules. Why? Because women understand women. It's simple as you're not going to find many men who are going to go to Parliament and advocate on behalf of women. If there are two issues on the table, one where men are going to be, benefited the most, at least, and then one where women are going to be benefited the most, I think a man will tend to go with the former option over the latter much more quickly. So yes, in the region, at least in St. Kitts Nevis, most of our women have been given those sort of, I can't remember who it was, I think it was Sydney who referred to them as soft ministry. So, things like gender affairs, health, community development. I don't think that those ministries should ever be underestimated. I think all those ministries are very, very, very important and integral part of any sort of island or any sort of region, our area of the region. My issue is, I think that it's important that they have these things. I think that they're necessary, but I don't think that they're sufficient. So I definitely feel like women should be first in line for these sort of ministries, but I do think that they should also be first in line for ministries such as foreign affairs or defense, for example. I don't see why not. So I am not wholly opposed to it. I'm not opposed to them having ministries where women and children are touched on the most. So as I said, things like gender affairs, community development. Why? Because I think simply they'll do more than a man would do if a man was given that ministry, because they understand it more, they've lived it. But I also think that could be supplemented by a ministry that is sort of more broad-backed, or a ministry that where you have more power, as I said, things like foreign affairs, things like finance, defense. If we look at places in the world like Germany, Canada, Finland, these countries have lots of their women ministers are, for example, the Minister of Defense, are, for example, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and they're doing well at it. So it's not even to say like we don't have any examples in the world of people doing it and doing it well. We've seen that women can do it, so why not? So I think to sort of sum my answer up, I would definitely say that yes, they should have these roles, gender affairs, community development, because they live them. But yes, it is necessary, but it's not sufficient. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Sydney?
Gabrielle spoke a book. I'd love to hear it. So my answer is focus definitely more on the bias part of the question, right? And let's look at it this, right? Most countries roughly have 50% of their population being female, right? Most countries also have some level of marginalization of the female population, meaning that there is resulting inequality and inequity. And that level of marginalization increases when you have intersections of race, colorism, and sex. I had to throw in the colorism because we know how the Caribbean stay, right? In my personal opinion, I cannot view it as a bias when the aim is to level an uneven playing field. It is illogical for countries to aspire to achieve high levels of success while simultaneously keeping down half of their population. That's half of the human resources. For instance, look at Switzerland and Norway, where the economies and people have been thriving, because they're set in the present under policies protecting women's rights. Is it favoritism or bias to uplift the marginalized groups so that they stand on the same footing with primary benefiters and oppressors in order to achieve the overall societal improvement? I cannot see that as a bias. And the reason for this is that because the focus should be on the goal. The goal is not to have women 20,000 leagues above men. The goal is to level the playing field. It would be a bias where the goal was to have one group benefit more at the expense of another group. But where the aim is to uphold and protect human rights for all and create protections that assist in building a space that is accessible and safe for everyone, it cannot be a bias. That maths is not mathsing. That would be like saying policies dealing with classism are unfair to the rich, or policies dealing with racism are unfair to whichever group primarily benefits from those racist institutions. Or that would be like saying policies protecting children are unfair to adults. Efforts to achieve equality and equity are not biased. Providing opportunity and protection does not remove the concept of a meritocratic system. And I think that's what a lot of people have in mind. Like in these policies protecting women, they take it as though, well, yes, that means no matter what, no, women must get this space and take. That's not what the issue is. It's not about that. It's about accessibility. It's about making the opportunity available. The question we should be asking is, why are female politicians the ones that step up to address these issues? Men live in this world too. They interact with women every day of their life. But women are the ones that take up the stance in advocating for these issues. Why aren't male politicians leading in this area when it would literally benefit all sectors of the nation? Many of these European nations have proven that better policies protecting women literally improve the entire country. And you see, the thing is, I'm saying this to you, but I don't really like this ideology. Because it is true that sometimes the best person to speak on an issue is someone who suffered from it. But I don't like it because it implies that someone would have had to suffer to begin with, if you understand where I'm coming from. Many female leaders know exactly what it's like to have to scrape to any level of power. Many of them understand that intersection of class, race, and gender all too well, especially Black women, especially at international forums. And where they don't have that personal experience, they advocate as the voice of millions of unheard women. And who better to address the issues, as Gabrielle rightfully said, than the people who are affected and who actively listen to the affected group. I think the biggest mistake that we do make as nations, as people, as everybody, is to think that issues affecting women remain in a static environment. They are dynamic and they flow into every facet of society: education, tourism, law, health, the economy, whatever you want to say. And issues affecting women are issues of society, issues of human rights, issues affecting the strength and resilience of a nation. And questions like these come about when we refer to these issues in a way that falsely keeps it separate from all other actions of governance, administration, and society. Forgive me, because this question is just starting to drive me different, honestly.
That is fine. And before we move on, I see Bennett has a question.
Oh, sorry, I was hoping to get the rest from some of the other persons. But I just got a bit passionate also, Bennett, Child's Communication Specialist, listening to Gabriella and Sydni. And while I do agree that the issue of equality and equity is really what we're trying to get to, we must accept the fact that also that the political arena and parliament, everything is shaped also by the agendas of the political parties. So we cannot get away from that. So while I may want to agree with you, Gabriella, that it is better to give a woman the Ministry of Health, I will disagree with you because we must understand at the end of the day, is that woman truly representing the interests of women? Let me give you a simple example. My grand aunt was the first elected female parliamentarian in St. Lucia, that's Geraldine Rock. And she ran for the very same constituency that the youngest female parliamentarian in the Caribbean was elected, Minister Rambali, at her time, right? However, was there when Geraldine Rock was elected, one of the biggest things that she really impacted was establishing the Women's Affairs Ministry, which is now Gender Affairs. Lauren Williams came in, and it was really good to see her in the House last week representing women from 1994, and really drove this new domestic violence bill that we now, 28 years after. And what I want to ask, and I want to ask Lisa this also, is there a responsibility on women themselves to ensure that when they hold female elected parliamentarians accountable? Because giving somebody a ministerial position because they're a woman, it doesn't mean that there will be representation of women. It may just be that you have somebody towing the party line. So I really want you to take in the part of how the party shapes the affairs of government. You have government, but it still is shaped by the policies of the political parties. And there is a commitment from a lot of elected members to serve the party before they serve the people. So that's what I really wanted to say on that. Thank you.
Hi, Bennett. I didn't know that you are a forestier, because Miss Geraldine Rock is also from, the deceased, God rest her soul, from my constituency. That is why I started off by saying that recently at our women's conference, we passed this resolution to increase support for female parliamentarians. Our current Minister of Gender Affairs is also our Minister for Home Affairs, which is, she's responsible for the administration of the police. So she has two remarkable positions that she holds. And of course, I did speak about crime earlier. I do not think that in St. Lucia, we have this situation where women are being placed to represent the issues of men, and they are not necessarily the ones who may capture or best represent it. I think what we have in St. Lucia right now is the perfect representation. Our current Minister of Gender Affairs is the same one who brought the Beijing Platform for Action, 1995, 27 years ago, pushing for that quota for female participation. She's the same one who pushed the domestic violence bill 28 years later in our parliament last week. She's our Minister for Gender Relations. She's also our Minister for Home Affairs. Very strong, powerful force to be reckoned with, woman who at one point also served as the vice chair for our party. I am not aware of what transpired before my time. What I can tell you is I'm very proud to be a part of a party that has passed a resolution to increase female participation, to increase support for women at the party level. And I do understand what you mean, Bennett, about it's a matter of some women find themselves too in the party lines. But in St. Lucia, with this government, with this St. Lucia Labour Party administration, that is not the case. So I can only speak to my time. Of course, I was not there in the time of Miss Rock, and you know how much she had to fight for equal participation for females. But just jumping quickly back to what Sydni said, and I did not feel like I had to comment. Sydni, I thought you did a fantastic job in explaining this. We are talking about human rights, fundamental human rights. And if we are advocating for human rights, how is that a bias? And you did, I just wanted to commend you on your brilliant explanation, tying in racism, because then it excludes a certain class. Protecting the rights of our children, what about the adults? I mean, this is really what it is. If it's a fundamental opportunity to level the playing field for all, then it is absolutely not bias. So I just wanted to add that, Sydney. I thought you did a fantastic job, and maybe you should really think again about your future in politics. Hopefully by the end of this conversation, you may have a response for me, but we can chat later.
To just sort of add to what was just said, I found the comment made, I think it was Mr. Bennett Charles. I found the comment very interesting because we have been looking at the issue quite superficially. We have been looking at it sort of two-dimensional, right? You know, a woman is elected, therefore, hurrah, hooray, we won. When in reality, we haven't looked at the sort of the color aspect. It's not that black and white. The three-dimensional aspect of it being that woman's intentions need to be pure. Her intentions for going in there need to be to advocate on behalf of other women. So we need to look at things like this. So when we see women coming forward, wanting to be a part of politics, of course, I think we should applaud it for sure. But we should also look at what the agenda is, what's behind that. Whether it's to do work, to advocate on behalf of women, or whether it's to further the man's agenda. So I think it's definitely made me think a lot. So thank you for that, Bennett.
I have something to add to Gabrielle's comment because I agree with Mr. Charles and when he mentioned the specific issue about holding our parliamentarians, our representatives accountable. And that in itself is, in essence, a core factor in a democratic society, that ability to hold our governments and our representatives accountable. Now, I think this also goes back to what the senator was saying about education. Do we have educated populations that are in positions that possess the knowledge, that understand their rights in order to facilitate holding our representatives accountable? Because people think that going on a radio station and cussing and getting on is holding a representative accountable. There are formal channels to go through. And I think that I would really much agree with the senator when we're saying that this kind of education, maybe I should call it re-education as well, because the older populations have to be taken into account. This education has to start from the time that we are trying to instill political consciousness in students, because that's something that you have to take up from that age. We need to create populations that fully understand the breadth and width of their constitutional rights, of their ability to hold their representatives accountable. And I agree, woman or not, everybody is subject to being held accountable. Being a woman does not excuse you from that. And that is not, I don't think that's the argument anybody here has made today or is trying to make. Yeah, that's just my opinion.
Thank you all. You can see the passion coming from each one of you. Just want to read three comments that's in the chat. Della Ashby, she said, as a member of the same party, I want to endorse Lisa's statements. The party has grown tremendously, especially under the present leader, when it comes to appreciating, advocating, and forwarding the positions of women, not just on a party level, but also on a national level. And she said, many applause to Sydney. The passion with which she speaks should make a formidable parliamentarian or politician. So you have people rooting for you in the region. And Bennett Charles, who said he loved this panel, so warmly, fierce and passionate. And Jessica, who said Sydney always a powerhouse. So, no, there you have it. So you see, Sydney, I guess, rightfully so, you deserve to be on this panel. Before we wrap up, I just have one more question, which is, what advice would you give to girls and young women aspiring to political leadership? Also, two questions. What advice would you give to girls and young women aspiring to political leadership and women who are already in politics but questioning the impact and whether to continue? What advice would you give to them?
Let me just also mention how amazing it was to look at that back and forth between Sydney, Gabriella, and the senator. That was truly amazing. And, I agree with all of the points made. I really didn't even have anything to add after Sydney spoke. That was truly commendable. So I think my advice to young girls and women aspiring to political leadership might be like Sydney. Be bold, be charismatic, and be unapologetic, and be who you are. I think a lot of times a lot of people go into these roles trying to be someone that they're not. But if you are authentic, if you're true to yourself, your roots, your culture, your, what values and the morals that you have, then it would portray and it would transcend into the person that you're trying to be in that political field. And then to the women who are already in politics and that may be questioning their impact, you are doing amazing. And I think that I admire any woman who has the strength and the gall to step into that field. So just know that even just by being there, by waking up every morning and saying, oh gosh, I have to go deal with these men again, there are young girls and young women that are sitting back and are admiring you and that want to be like you and want to be in your shoes. So even though you may question what you're doing, at sometimes you may be doubting, why did I choose to, take this role? Just know that there are people who are cheering for you, some maybe silently, some maybe publicly, but you are supported, and just know that, to continue doing the amazing work that you're doing.
Awesome, that's some great advice. Any one of you, I will call on someone. Gabriella?
Sure. Well, I just had a feeling I'd be next. I don't know why. So I guess to start with the first bit of your question, what advice would I give to aspiring or women who are interested? I would say do it. Why not? If not you, then who? I always say that to myself. With this career fair that I'm doing, I spoke to so many people about doing it. People I thought would be better at it because I'm 21, I don't know anything, I'm just in school. And then I just realized it wasn't going to get done. So I did it myself. And I think in life, if we don't do things ourselves, they're simply just not going to get done. So why not, take the chance, do it. If it works, then great. If it doesn't work, at least you can say that you tried, you put in the effort, and it's better to have a sort of, oh, it didn't work, than a sort of what if, at least that's how I feel. Knowing that it didn't work out and accepting that and moving on is much better than having that question in your head all the time. I wonder if it would have worked. I wonder what would have happened had I taken that opportunity, had I decided to do it. So I would definitely say to do it. Why not? Why not? What's keeping you back? Imposter syndrome is probably what's keeping them back. And I would say to them, as somebody who suffers from imposter syndrome myself all the time, do it. Why not? You never know just being in that place, you might not win, you might not get the party's support, you might not even get that far, but you might meet so many women, men in the process who can then help you get somewhere else in life. You just never know where things might take you. And I see no reason why you shouldn't take that chance. I think that's the advice I would give to a young woman thinking about it. To somebody who's currently in it and is questioning their position, similar to what I guess Nafesha said, for me at least, I am somebody, I research. I am going to wake up in the morning, look up things about female leaders and admire. I don't know whether other women do that, but I love admiring other women in terms of the things that they do, the things that they accomplish. I know I have several friends, female friends, who do the same. And we have been doing this since we were 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Perhaps not through the internet, because the internet wasn't as common then, but through things that you might hear on TV, etc. There are lots of women like us, little girls just like us, who are looking at you and are thinking, wow, how did she do that? Wow, how is she still doing this in a male-dominated area? There are so many little girls and boys, I'm sure, who are looking at you and are impressed. I would say that you'd just be disappointing many, many, many little girls to see that you are no longer in a position, you step down, you're no longer interested, not because of a personal, substantial reason, but because you just don't feel like you're good at it, or you don't feel like you're making a contribution. I think you'd be breaking the hearts of so many young boys and girls around the region. At least baby Gabriella would have been heartbroken. And I think there are lots of baby Gabriellas who are always interested in what are women doing around the world, always interested in politics, love to look on, really vigilant. So I would definitely say continue doing it. continue what you're doing. You might not feel as if you're making an impact, but people are watching. My father always tells me that, and I've only sort of started to realize it as I got older. People are always watching. You think you're going to a parking lot that is empty? It's not empty. People are always watching, whether you like it or not. So make sure that you present yourself in the best way you can possibly present yourself at all times. Because when you're in that parking lot crying, saying you can't do it, oh, the men winning, there's a little girl somewhere on the side of that parking lot listening to you and thinking, well, I look up to her. If she can't do it, then who am I? You know? So I would definitely say continue doing it, because you just don't know how many little faces are looking at you and are looking up to you. You just don't know. So I would definitely say continue.
Maybe I can jump in, Randall. Wow. To those who are interested in getting into politics, whether it be elective politics or community politics, the one thing I tell people is to read. And Gabriella touched on that. Read, learn from the people before you. And I said that a while ago. Follow the leaders, the female leaders around the world. Follow the female leaders around the region. I'm a huge Mia Motley fan, not because she is always on social media, but because she's like Sydney, unapologetic for who she is. And because she has that strong belief in herself, when she stands in a room, you see people like Boris Johnson nodding his head, the Prime Minister of the UK, and she's well respected. So respectfully stand up for who you are. Do not make any apologies for who you are. If you are true to your conviction, you should not want to feel like, do I belong, or being worried about what people say. Just learn from the people around you, and you will be fine. To those who are involved, Gabriella, that's just the thing. Wherever you go, people are watching. There's this young boy in a community. He's probably 6 years old. Every time he sees me, he wants to take a picture with me. Every time. And you think you are just impacting the lives of young girls, you're impacting the lives of young boys as well, because they are not in the environment where they may necessarily understand that there is a bias, like a perceived bias, like what we are going through. They might come from a new generation that will be the ones to push equality. They are the ones that may advocate for 30% female participation in politics. So you just never know who is looking at you. Some days it's going to be down. Surround yourself. I have a very tight circle of friends, and that includes members of my family. People that if I need to open and speak about the way I feel about a particular issue, they are always ready and willing. So find that circle. Smart people, learn from others, learn from those who have gone before you, and don't give up.
Well, I guess it's my turn now. I have to say the words of my colleagues really hitting home, because they really were speaking the gospel out here. Just to reemphasize one of the things is to definitely be 100% authentically yourself. You have to find a voice. Do not think that you are too timid to have a voice, or you're too little to have a voice, or you're too behind the scenes to have a voice. There are a million different types of personalities, and any single personality is capable of leadership. Find a cause, a passion, and work towards building a platform. Set goals and expectations and time frames from yourself, and know your cause inside and out. You're not supposed to be caught lacking out here. Research, as Gabrielle said, research, that's your best friend. And most importantly, that I think, political leadership does not necessarily have to be governmental. Grassroots and community-based work is extremely important. And I'd suggest a lot of you all starting in your schools. That's personally where my journey started, from primary school. I was very bold-faced. And you don't have to lead either. Being part of the project, showing support for these projects, helping in the planning and the execution is just as important as the person whose name is there on the leader. And lastly, seek help. Ask for advice, talk to professionals, formulate plans, join groups and workshops, look for sponsors and donors, and most importantly, find your people, find colleagues. There is not a single thing that you would ever have to do on your own. Networking is definitely your best friend. If there's one thing Whipley taught us, that power of networking is different. And finally, To the women who are already involved in politics, please do not give up. You have no idea how many people you have inspired and helped. Gabrielle said that one best. And I personally am a woman that you have inspired. Some things take more time than others, and we know it can be disheartening when sometimes you try to push these moves and they don't produce the results you expected. Maybe you expected to reach 10,000 people and you ended up reaching 100. But remember that those 100 people are better off because of you. Any change, no matter how small or how long it took to come about, is meaningful and important. Give yourself time and be kind to yourself. Always be kind to yourself. We know how mentally vigorous politics is. You have also taken up a burden that few people can manage and have been using that power to effect change. You are not alone. Lean on the women who have come before you, those who currently share the stage with you, and those who are definitely, and there are definitely women following in your footsteps. And effecting change doesn't mean that you have to solve every aspect of an issue. Laying the foundation, even if it's only one brick, is just as important. You are building the stage for other women to come up and assist you. And as they say, with great power comes great responsibility. Quote me on that from Spider-Man, right? And there's a responsibility here not to quit. Giving up on yourself, on your ideas and initiatives, and your effort is giving up on the people that you have helped and are currently helping and will most definitely help. You are appreciated and you are valued. You might not hear it often, but you most definitely are. Your people, your representatives, the people who you have been elected by, they see you. And I will leave you with a quote, one of my favorite quotes, by a Pakistani activist. Her name is Malala Yousafzai. And she said, "Let future generations say we were the ones who stood up. Let them say we were the first to live in a world where all girls can learn and lead without fear." End of quote.
Wow. Wow. Thank you very much, all of you. I must say, I learned quite a few things from each one of you on the panel. Okay, so Kellyanne has her hand up.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kellyanne here, Kellyanne Gajada from St. Lucia. Hi, Sydney. Hi, Gabriella. Hi, Lisa. I think I know everybody here, and Nafesha as well. One thing that I am going to say quickly, I admire everything that you all have said, and kudos to this forum today. But one of the most powerful stories that stuck out to me whilst doing the weekly program was when we had one of the sitting ministers, I think it was from, I'm not sure if it was from Antigua, but one of the other Caribbean islands, and she was saying that she was a part of a party at the time, and they were in the process of passing a bill, and she was not, in good terms with what was happening at that time. So while she was representing the party that was in power and they were in the process of passing the bill, she did not believe that, it was right for the bill to be passed, and she voted against that bill. Yes, right, Anguilla, correct. And for some reason, I think that was when I really got my wake-up call. That was for me my moment of truth, and I was like, this is where integrity comes in. As much as we want to be a part of politics and we want to delve into doing all those different things, we must always remember to stay true to who we are as an individual and not stay true to party, because at the end of it all, again, the most important part is those persons who have voted for us, that have entrusted us as representatives for them, to not go against them and not go against what they are putting us there for. So whilst we have affiliated ourselves with different parties, we have to be very careful and very true to form to ensure that whatever we're doing, that we're doing it with integrity, that we actually agree to doing it and not it's been pushed onto us, And I feel like a lot of times when you look around the Caribbean, you see persons they entered into politics and they have gone into a party, and a lot of things are happening, and behind the scenes, they complain about it, that they don't agree to certain things, and you still see that they're in the forefront, voting for those things to happen, whilst deep down inside they do not agree to doing it. So this is something that I think that we need to ensure that we put out there, that you stay true to yourself, stay true to representation, and not just follow the masses blindly. It's a very, very important to stay true to who you are. And I think for me, that is one of the things that, kind of, gave me a wake-up call, as much as I probably may be interested in going to politics, but, standing up to the party that you have been voted into, sometimes it might be a very difficult situation to go into, and, it could butt heads with people, but that's something that I wanted to just, throw in there before we left today.
Thank you. And I think that's really important. People over party. That is really an important thing. And most times I think some people fail to acknowledge that. I mean, yes, you have to for the mandate of the party, but it's important to work for the people who elected you into government. And I see Maria has a hand up.
Hi, good afternoon. Let me just put my hand down. I just want to commend all the speakers today. I mean, talk about fire. I mean, this panel is fire. So just congratulations. It is so heartening to see young people who are just out there on the edge, pushing the conversation forward, pushing the society forward as a whole, pushing the politics forward and the party forward. What I did want to note, two things. When Bennett spoke about not all women, and I think that somebody else also spoke about that, not all women who are elected are working in the interest of women. And I wouldn't have gone so far back as the example you used. There have been more women in politics more recently who have not only not worked in the interest of women, but been very damaging to the interest of women. I would say that as a note that when we say elect women, we still have to elect women generally, because these women also do represent a certain sector of society that we have to understand exists. And it helps us realize the amount of work that we have to do when we could have somebody like that who's elected and who is supported by the people, because patriarchy runs deep and it runs through both male, female, and every other gender that you could come through. People, regardless of their representation, they do oftentimes hold that patriarchal line, and they hold it very, very strongly, which is some of the things that have pushed us, have prevented us from moving forward a little more progressively. And the other point I wanted to make is work where you are. We are not all meant to be ministers. We are not all meant to be prime ministers. It's fantastic when we are, and then we have certain powers that we can utilize. But let's never underestimate the power of a grassroots person. I remember Lisa had a show, Lisa Live. I mean, do you know how many people that came to that show and were educated and informed by what she was doing? Not because she was a minister or she was, a certain place in government, but because she was informing and educating and empowering people. So work where you are. If amazingly at some point that work that you're doing, because it's where you feel you have an impact and it's where you're comfortable, and it's where you can connect with people and actually measure the progress that is important to you. Amazingly, you might find that might eventually end up you being prime minister. It was pointed out to me, of course, like for example, Nia, what we have to speak about, she did a lot of community work before she did eventually become prime ministers, but that doesn't have to be your goal. That shouldn't necessarily be your goal. Your goal should be to make a change where you are, in as little increments as you feel you can, or in as big increments as you can, because some of us have a lot of power. The power of your voice, the power of your representation, the way you look, the way you speak in every circle that you are, the way you leave your house and walk down the road, that says so much. And I think we should never push too much to be in an uncomfortable position where we don't feel as if we're getting the impact that we want, because sometimes this is not where you should be. The impact that you could have can be in the trenches as opposed to being on the throne. Just again, congratulations to everybody on the panel. Just wonderful to hear all of you.
And Kellyanne made a comment. Helen's daughters in St. Lucia is a perfect example, and that is, she did a lot of work with rural women farmers on island. So that's a good example right there. So I would just like to take this time to thank each and every one of you, the panelists, for being on here, sharing your knowledge and experience with us, giving a lot of insight. There's a lot to take in. I'm pretty sure everyone on this call learned something from each one of you. The passion is there. You can see all of you really love politics. Whether it be elective politics, community politics, whatever it is, you can see there is some sort of level of love right there. So thank you once again for taking your time out to being here and sharing with us. And I would just like to leave one thing right now. I think the 66th session of the Commission of Status of Women is going on right now, and ECADE has a session coming up in an hour and a half. So if any of you would like to join, you could get the link on our social media pages, Instagram at EC_equality. It's on our Facebook page as well, Eastern Caribbean Alliance, on Twitter as well as at EC_equality. So you can go there, look for the link, and just sign up if you would like to join that session. To learn more, they would be joined by House of Chameleon and Access Chapter 2, which is an organization in South Africa. So stay tuned if you want to be part of that session. Thank you once again. And thank you, Nafesha. I tried my best to moderate very good. But yes, thanks once again, and enjoy the rest of the evening and the week. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Randall, for having us.
Honestly, it really was a pleasure.
Yes. Okay. So it's South Africa and the Pacific. Yes. Speaking on climate change. Yes. And how gender is involved, in that aspect. So yes. Thank you once again.